The Shared Outcomes Fund Trees Outside Woodland research project ran 4 pilots testing different ways which this hugely important but often overlooked part of our treescape could be supported and re-established. In this film, you'll hear from the team of local authority project officers who ran the Urban Trees pilot about what they learned along the way and what the data they gathered shows.
Yeah, so I'm Ben Norwood. I'm one of the project officers based down in Cornwall.
I'm Sophie Hamlet. I'm the project officer based in Chichester.
I'm Emma Cross. I'm the project officer based at the Norfolk County Council. And I'm Louise Watfoy. I'm the project officer from Kent.
I'm Debbie Murray. I've been maternity cover for the project officer at Norwich.
So I'm Louise. I'm the KCC project officer who led on the Urban Trees pilot, and we've been focusing on testing the Miyawaki method as a way to successfully establish trees in urban areas. So I came across the Miyawaki method through a BBC documentary that I saw, and as we were planning the pilot, I thought, this could be interesting. This may be something worth trying out. So the Miyawaki method is a tree planting and tree establishment methodology created by Akira Miyawaki, who is a Japanese botanist, and it essentially involves preparing the soil to make it really aerated and adding lots of nutrients into it, planting a wide range of native species suited to the area really densely, mulching and caring for the trees for 2 to 3 years while they establish, and then letting it kind of develop by itself after a while. So we decided to test this by comparing the Miyawaki style of planting to local authorities' usual style of planting in 2 comparison plots in a urban park. And then the other partner local authorities also delivered their own trials in their areas. When we first planted our first Miyawaki, on one hand, we had absolutely no idea what would happen because it's something really new that we was only aware of one other plot that had been planted in the UK, and we were kind of doing it ourselves as a local authority. We weren't getting it all done as a package by a contractor. So we didn't have that many expectations, but from seeing different projects in other countries, it had worked really well there. So we were hopeful that it would work. But yeah, we kind of went in not expecting too much and got good results.
For me, I think it was very similar because I'd seen, it was 2019, I think I'd seen it on the telly about, it was in Whitney, that first one going in. And then it sort of fell to the back of my mind because of obviously the pandemic and everything. And then, when I heard about this, I was like, actually I might eventually understand what this is about, because I sort of heard the name but hadn't really put 2 and 2 together. And then when it was sort of being presented and the methodology is being sort of shown to us, you could sort of see its potential, I thought, particularly in some landscapes, and it just sounded like quite an engaging way, different and engaging way to get people involved in trees. Well, it was certainly engaging just as a project officer because it was different. So it was, again, the chance to learn something new, I think. And sort of see where we could take it.
When we were first planning this pilot, it was really difficult to find information on the internet about how to actually do the method. I had to go to so many different sources from different countries and try and cobble it all together in my mind and create a bit of a plan of how we as a local authority could deliver this.
Was that because people were being gatekeepers of that information?
Some of them were, some of them you had to pay to go on training courses or even just access the PDFs online. But the man who delivered that Whitney one, I spoke to him on the phone, and I kind of explained that this is a pilot and it's all for research, and he kindly offered to advise us on the method.
Was everyone else blown away by the growth rate?
So there was one site in Chichester that didn't do well at all. So that was a really interesting one because, yeah, we'd heard that the growth rate was great, and obviously your Parkwood one went in the year before, and we'd already seen how good the growth rate was. So I was expecting, particularly from one of my sites, I was expecting more than it delivered. So yeah, and I'm still not quite sure why that one didn't do as well. Very interesting. That one was planted in 2021, the 2021-22 planting season, and we're only just seeing the growth rate that kind of, Louise, you've seen earlier on in your sites. So the growth rate was there eventually, but took longer to start.
Yeah, we've had a really similar story in Cornwall as well.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether it's just to do with site exposure or elevation or something, but it's taken that few years. It seemed to be a bit of a lag, and then eventually it seems to have really taken off this year, which is great.
So how old is that one?
It was same year, so 21, 22. So if I can, it's about three and a bit years, 3 planting seasons.
Because they kind of say that it's in the second year when they really start to put on the growth.
Right.
Yeah.
What really shocked me was the difference in the survival rates between our Miyawaki and our non-Miyawaki pop, because it was that really hot summer and dry summer, 21, 22, yeah. And like we're going to monitor it, I kind of thought, there's going to be a bit of a difference probably between them, but it was just like the vast majority of the ones on the control side were dead, and the Miyawaki was thriving, and it was just such a contrast. Like, yeah, we were really looking for trees that had survived, and yeah, the Miyawaki was fine.
And it is not that often where you genuinely see something so stark a contrast, isn't it? Or that it sort of is so demonstrable as to how it could actually work.
Yeah.
And the Miyawaki just looks so healthy. The first monitoring I did, I went to 3 sites and all of them were just so amazing. And I just thought, these trees are only 2 years old. This is unbelievable.
And it's exciting because it also makes you ask a lot of questions, doesn't it? It sort of really stimulates that sort of, okay, what's going on here, doesn't it?
And the nice thing about the project as well, because it's the research pilot, it was the Miyawaki versus the control. We planted both. So you get that visual impact, and everything. It's the same site. All the other conditions were the same, apart from the style of planting. So you could really see the two different.
And it was really, when we were putting them in, there was quite a few people I was talking to saying, well, if you just plant trees, normally in densely and look after them, they'll do fine. And I was like, well, okay, yes, maybe, but not as well as what we're seeing, maybe. So it was just interesting to see that change, and maybe it might challenge some preconceptions around stuff.
We weren't particularly trying to show anything. We were just trying to experiment with the methodology. So we didn't know whether it would work or whether it would be, cost effective for a local authority, and it turns out that it has been. But now we know that, we can say that this is a useful tool for local authorities to use to deliver high numbers of trees reliably, which will survive in an urban area where maybe, they're more vulnerable to vandalism or drought, or they have tougher conditions to live in. But now we can prove that it is something worth considering.
One of our sites is at a school, so all the pupils got involved in planting. Yes, we still got a contract to do the fencing around the outside, but the kids and teachers and things did the planting, and there you can save some money. So yeah, if there are areas to save money while doing it, that definitely.
It's really been interesting to be able to do like further trials where you're trying to work out, what is making that real difference to the growth, and trying to look at like the mulching or the things we're adding to the soil, or is it turning over the soil? Like what is really making a difference? So kind of trying to refine that a bit further, and then we can just do the bits that really make a difference and make it even more cost effective.
When we first did the first ever one in Kent, there wasn't any contractors that had any experience with the Miyawaki method. It was also during COVID, so we couldn't use any volunteers, so a lot of it was us planting the trees ourselves. But as the years have gone on, I'm now being approached by contractors who want to specialise in Miyawaki, and they can offer like a whole package of doing the soil, purchasing the trees, doing the fencing, doing everything in one neat little deal.
I found it really useful as an exercise. Yeah, again, just understanding where that cost went and what processes, if you did want to manage something in-house, what that step-by-step process would be, managing those contractors. And sometimes, as long as you, as a project officer, had overarching an idea of what you needed to achieve, it didn't necessarily matter. Your contractors had specialist skill. You could just, as long as you gave them careful instruction and sort of a good specification, they could deliver that. But as long as you had oversight, so that it was a really good exercise in that little project management. But also,
I found it quite surprising how easy it was to find sites for it. I thought it might be quite tricky because it was quite a specific thing, wanting a mini forest, and people might be worried about managing it within their, park or whatever. And it was very specific, requirement for the experiment that we wanted to have, these two different sides and later lots of different sections. But actually I found it really easy to find sites for it.
That's really interesting because I didn't find it. And that's, again, just a difference between local authorities. We are a district, so less overall land. But definitely when I first kind of went out to try and find sites in the first year, there's only one site that was on district council owned land. One was a private site, another was a school. I found it a bit of a challenge to find a suitable site. I think as time's gone on in the latter years of the project, because we've seen how it can be done and things, it has been slightly easier. But at the start, to try and convince someone that we wanted to do this on even CDC land, it was a little bit tricky to find a site.
For us, it's been challenging with the sites. We tried to focus on schools. Maybe that was probably narrowing it down a bit too much. But schools at the moment quite have a lot of downward pressure on their budgets, and they're particularly concerned around maintenance of long term. So whilst the ones we've had have been really pleased that they've gotten off and established really well, and trying to convince people to take on another liability. But it's also tried to force us to try and sell what positives it could be. Could it be a learning environment? Could you be really creative in the design process? We have had really good response from some parish councils wanting to do these, and that might be because they're recipients of they're in control of public green space and they get the development section 106 money, and so for them it's a really good way to involve their community in taking ownership of their spaces as well. So.
I found it was quite intense when I was doing it, unlike the tree grants where they were kind of carrying on in the background and you could just keep doing them. It was quite intense the first time, meeting all the specification for the different levels and the different percentages, and making sure the contractors were on in time for me. And then when I ordered the trees and then to get the planting done, it felt like there was a lot dependent on each other.
Do you think that was more to do with the time scale delivery in terms of...
Yeah, well, I had to get it done and paid for by the end of March.
In a very compressed time,
Yeah, it was a compressed time. But I felt like once you've been through it once, it would be much easier the second time, because you've kind of done it and you've got the experience of it, and then it wouldn't be so stressful the next time round.
There is quite a lot of project management, I think, though, from a project officer point of view. Yes. Exactly what you said. There are all the different elements they have to line up.
They have to all line up. Yeah.
And there's a whole procurement element as well, making sure you're doing it within your council's your procurement guidelines and things like that, isn't it?
Yeah, and all the meeting the criteria of making sure you send the same email to all the contractors and etc. So it felt like a lot of plates all spinning at the same time for a short period, whereas everything else was running along in the background. But I felt now I've done it, I wouldn't feel stressed doing it again, because once you've done it, it's then quite easy.
Yeah, you've got your suppliers, you know who to go to.
Yeah.
And actually, the contractors doing the work, if they've done it before, I think you said it, didn't you, that it's really hard. I felt the first time we did it really hard to try and describe what we wanted them to do. It's like, hang on, but you want to rotate down to a metre, but you also want to plant densely. You want me to add.
What is it? You want to dig a hole and fill it back in again?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So trying to explain to a contractor that didn't have any idea, and I had limited knowledge on what it was supposed to look like as well. That was quite difficult.
Yeah, and that you're not mad. There is a thought process behind it.
But then next to it, you want to plant a control. Yeah. Okay. I would say there's benefits of both, either whether it's done entirely by a contractor or whether it's done with volunteers and with the community. There's certain elements that would work better for certain sites. So I've for the mini Miyawaki plots that I did this year, it was all done just by a contractor. It's a really quick and efficient way of doing it. It does cost slightly more, but for kind of a small plot with just a few trees, that was an ideal way of doing it. I think getting the local community, whether it's a school, whether it's volunteers involved in the planting, is a really, really nice thing to do.
Because they take ownership of it.
Yeah, take ownership, they really engage with the project.
It reaches more people in the community because the parents come with the children and then they start asking you questions. But it's like all the trials, there's benefits. Yeah. There's some benefits to different ways, and it depends. You're offering options to a local authority to, this way might fit that site and this way might fit that site. The same as farmers are all different, sites are all different, aren't they?
Yeah. I think a project officer should at least try one.
Yes.
So they get a really good understanding of the process, the stages you need to go through, what that costs as well, because it is quite it is a costly item to deliver.
Upfront.
Yeah, upfront. So.
But if you get high survival rates over in the long term, you have to weigh up that cost between planting trees and then most of them dying.
Definitely, but actually doing one, and then if you then need to commission one, you then have got a really good understanding of what you're asking them to deliver, and what you need to make sure is being done correctly.
I think you can also look for a contractor who can deliver several elements as well without them being a specialist for Miyawaki. Yeah. So, for example, we had someone do the fencing and also turning over the soil because they had a digger, but they weren't like a Miyawaki specialist. It's just helpful they could do those two elements. So then you didn't have to manage so many different contractors on site.
Yeah. So they
and they did the mulching.
As well.
It's a scalable solution.
It's a scalable. Yeah.
And that's what's nice about testing the mini plots. Actually, if you do only have space for a dozen trees or whatever it might be, can you plant those in the Miyawaki-style, and is that a more effective way of planting?
It's also managing some people's expectations of what it might be, isn't it? We always imagine urban trees to be this one sort of solitary or avenue, but actually it could be a very different type of planting, isn't it? And just to embrace that rather than rail against it all the time. I think that's been, for me, one of the biggest
and also I think
things.
Like what we've learned about soil preparation and species mixtures and things like that, you can take that knowledge and put it into different types of projects as well.
Totally.
I think as well, with just like the climate becoming more extreme and the survival rates we've seen with the Miyawaki and the kind of harsh urban conditions, just it doesn't have to be a safer option. Forest. Yeah, it could be a cost-effective option, and for actually getting any trees established.
It was really telling in our school site up at Camelford, where it was only a few miles in from the sea, right on top of the hill, and previous planting projects had essentially all failed, or they had become sort of moribund. Whereas a few years on after doing this technique, the trees are up and away and going, and they're outstripping what was planted years before. And so I think it's just and if you can use that method to establish trees in a really hostile environment, then that's really encouraging.
I would say that, all the different steps in the method it's nothing new. It's nothing that, people have never thought about before. It's just combining them to give your trees the best head start. And I know our pilots have had a little bit of a few comments from people saying, this isn't anything new, we've been doing this for years and years and years, which is true, but it's just putting all those aspects together, and I don't think there's anything really to be sceptical about.
I think urban planting is difficult, and this is probably quite a less vulnerable way of planting urban trees.
Just like to show them some pictures of the control and the Miyawaki side. I think if you haven't seen that, it's hard to imagine the difference.
I think it's just having that option. It's a bit of it. It's just a suite, isn't it, of different things. It is engaging, and people do find it. And particularly if you're, for example, needing a quick result, actually having, because trees can be a hard sell sometimes when their growth is very slow over time, and
Especially if they get vandalised.
yeah, or if they have all these challenges they have to face, and actually getting something off the ground can be just very positive as well, isn't it? Because it just sort of shows that something can grow.
Yeah, it's very demoralising for like the public and local authorities as well to see trees that have been recently planted and they're all dead. And it just makes people think it's a waste of money and what's the point? But
Or they won't grow there, and rather than asking why.
So nothing can ever be planted.
Yeah, and we shan't try ever again, isn't it? So it's just it's a good option to try.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we touched on the subject of Miyawaki just as it was becoming a hot topic, which was lucky for our project. And yeah, since then, I mean, even in Kent, other teams within the local authority are doing Miyawakis in parks and schools and everything. So it's ballooned since we first did our trials.
And it's been really important to actually find out, or try and at least understand what's going on, isn't it? Because
because a lot of people are planting them, but
we don't actually know what was going on, isn't it? So it's been really important, and I think that's the power of the trial plots we've had, is that we've had the comparison control to be able to demonstrate that difference, or that, and hopefully have some comparison sites in the long term, really, isn't it?
I think it's just so powerful when you go to the sites, because it's been done as this experiment, the side-by-side contrast. So, for example, our sites that we planted 21, 22, you go to the control side and it's just kind of grass, like there's maybe like 5 trees hanging on still, looking very sad. And then you look at the Miyawaki side and it is like you're kind of in a forest, like the trees are above your head, they're really dense, you can't really get in there. And it's just such a contrast between the two.
And it was really interesting. One of the sites we went to in Norfolk, and we were exploring around it. It was this little oasis in a fairly barren sort of mown grass field, fairly bereft of any character. But yet, out of that little oasis, sort of emerged all this sort of wildlife, almost all the different bird species that were flushing out.
Just as we arrived, we flushed out.
It was really heartening to see, really, and it just shows that, isn't it? If you just quote a film, isn't it? If you put it there, wildlife will come, isn't it? So, which is lovely.